The story begins with a ceremony that seemingly went wrong. The young girl who was the subject of the ceremony, Celistina, received no blessing, despite everyone else receiving one from the gods or spirits. A few years later, matchmaking resumes came flooding in. But all Celistina could think about was how shallow the applicants seemed. She was the daughter of a marquis, so she didn't deny the idea of a political marriage, but she knew she should at least have some standards. Celistina did want to get married, but she didn't want it to be loveless. There was a knock at her door and Celistina wondered who it could be. She called the guest in, and it turned out to be one of her maids, arriving with the last background check. Celistina thanked her, but the maid instantly noticed Celistina's somber gaze. She asked the young lady if something was the matter. The maid asked if Celistina was engaged to Lord Solitique. Celistina agreed flatly. The maid asked why she was looking at matchmaking materials when the Lord treated her so well, but Celistina mumbled that it was because the engagement would be broken off soon anyway. The maid barely heard her, so Celistina smiled and simply asked for a pot of tea instead. Celistina knew she didn't want to look for a new fiancé. If only there was a way to escape this difficult situation. She had memories of her past life, and in that life she already knew this world. It was from a popular fantasy otome game, The Maidens of Asgard. The world consisted of the Great Temple and 5 countries, with the Kingdom of Albalai as the main setting. Celistina should have been thrilled to be reincarnated into her favorite game. The only issue was the character she reincarnated into. Celistina was a beautiful young noble lady abandoned by the gods. Her childhood friend and fiancé, Solitique, was the first prince of the kingdom and one of the main romance targets. The heroine, who had already triggered a flag at the party, was now pursuing Solitique. Meanwhile, Celistina's status as the game's villain remained. To make matters worse, if the heroine achieved her happy ending, Celistina would be dumped and exiled. Even worse, in the game, Celistina was overcome by jealousy. She was accused of poisoning Solitique and the heroine and sentenced to death. So now, she was at what was meant to be the blissful stage of her engagement, knowing only that her bleak future was around the corner. Celistina did everything she could to be worthy of staying by Lord Solitique's side, even without a blessing. But the heroine was destined to fall for him, because that was the fate of this world. Celistina trusted that her character would not go as far as poisoning anyone, but she still might have to follow the scenario due to the game's scripted events. She didn't want to die, of course, but she especially didn't want Lord Solitique to die. Celistina snapped herself out of her deep thoughts. Fortunately, she no longer had strong feelings for Solitique, and she knew she was capable of smiling and blessing them both. There was another knock at her door, and Celistina wondered if it was Anna. But instead, it was Lord Solitique himself. She had no idea he was coming. Celistina was flustered to see him, but Solitique apologized for dropping by so suddenly. He told her he just wanted to see her, using his errand with the Marquis as an excuse to visit. Celistina didn't know what to say. Wasn't the heroine supposed to already be winning him over at this stage? It seemed that didn't matter to him. Solitique asked what was wrong, and Celistina mumbled that Anna would be bringing tea shortly. She instructed him to take a seat on the sofa, but Solitique's eyes drifted to the piles of paper on the table. Seeing that the matchmaking materials were in sight, Celistina rushed to clean them up, mumbling that it was just some old paperwork. Solitique smiled innocently. He called her Ceri, and his voice made her melt. She needed to find an excuse to leave, telling him she would check on Anna. When she turned her back, Solitique couldn't help but pick up the papers and instantly recognized them as matchmaking bios and background reports. He asked her if they weren't already engaged and if he wasn't good enough for her. If he was, why was she searching for another man? Celistina began to sweat, telling him it wasn't what he thought. She wondered if this would be the point where she mentioned the other woman and suggested calling off the engagement. But instead, she told him that she was an incomplete person who couldn't even receive a blessing and that someone blessed by the war god himself shouldn't be with someone like her. Her words were not taken well by Solitique, who asked why she was still hung up on that. He didn't choose his fiancée based on what blessing she had. Celistina agreed, telling him she knew he was kind. Solitique pulled her into a hug. He told her there was no need to search for a new fiancé. Even without a blessing, he would protect her. Solitique gazed lovingly into Celistina's eyes. It was intimate enough for Celistina to apologize. She hadn't realized how hard it would be to break off this engagement. She knew she had messed up too, having no idea Solitique would drop by today. When it was time for him to leave, he promised he would be back soon, and Celistina promised that she would be waiting for him. When Solitique had left, Celistina reflected on how they were still technically engaged. So of course he would be angry. But there probably wasn't a decent person who would marry a girl without a blessing anyway. Lords enriched their territories using the power of their blessings. However, as someone who had played the game, Celistina knew how to use the territory management system, but she didn't have a sacred tree or a territory, and it would be disastrous if someone without a blessing tried managing one. Sarashina's father was blessed by the sun god and it all seemed so unfair until Sarashina came up with an idea. She could always just borrow her father's territory. There was a knock at the door and Anna came with the tea. Anna smiled, noticing how cheerful Sarashina seemed. Sarashina announced that she wanted to go out and asked Anna to help her prepare. Anna began to pour the tea but spilled it when she heard Sarashina's plans. She told her lady she would get everything ready immediately. The truth was it was rare for Sarashina to go out, especially considering her lack of blessing, which often made her want to stay in her room. Sarashina set out on the long journey to her father's territory. Her carriage needed to travel through the city to get there. It had been a while since Sarashina had seen this place. Although she did remember going on stealth dates in the city, a strategy used to raise affection in the game. She remembered how easy it was to go on a date. Wearing glasses was disguise enough. But in real life, curious onlookers were everywhere. As Sarashina looked out the window, she saw Solatique with another woman. Now Sarashina had 3 options. First, confront him head-on. Second, pretend not to notice and bump into him in the same shop. And finally, pretend she hadn't seen anything at all. Sarashina looked to the other side of the carriage and decided to go with the last option. But Anna recognized Solatique just as quickly as Sarashina did, and she was outraged. She told Sarashina that this was a serious matter and the Lord needed to explain himself, or they should at least report what they saw to her father. Sarashina told her to relax and asked her not to tell him. The truth was that most people had a mark of blessing that appeared with divine favor. Yet no matter where Sarashina looked, she couldn't find one. Because she had no blessing, she was always looked down on. It was honestly a miracle her parents never abandoned her. If she went outside, she would only bring shame to the family. Sarashina couldn't help but give one last glance at Solatique and his companion. He bought a bouquet of flowers from a stall and handed it to the woman. Meanwhile, the only bouquet Sarashina had ever received from him was roses. She had been happy, but seeing this new girl smile made her feel a different kind of sadness. Of course, it was because those were the flowers given to the heroine, a special kind. Sarashina and Anna finally arrived at her father's territory, Linkrat, the capital city of Harmel. Anna mentioned how the last time her lady visited was when she was little, and Sarashina said she vaguely remembered the place. Of course, it had improved with many new and charming spots. Anna asked if she wanted to explore, but Sarashina was more interested in seeing the sacred tree first. They headed in that direction, but a woman suddenly crashed into Sarashina. She apologized, but the woman stayed silent. Anna asked if Sarashina was all right, and she brushed off the odd encounter, until they realized her bag was open and her wallet missing. Sarashina remembered that there was a bookmark inside her wallet that Solatique had given her. A passerby offered to retrieve it, and Sarashina noticed the stranger was a child. The bookmark was sentimental, so she knew she needed it back. She thanked the boy, who mentioned he needed some help himself. He set off, instructing Sarashina and Anna to wait. Sarashina called out for him to be careful. When he left, Anna mentioned she was convinced the child would ask for money. Sarashina knew that although it seemed like a nice town, there would still inevitably be some shady sides. Eliminating all the bad parts would be difficult. It took money, time, and effort. A few moments later, the child returned with Sarashina's wallet. She was overjoyed, pulling out the beautiful bookmark. Solatique had been so proud when he first gave it to her, especially since he made it himself. Sarashina noticed that the money was still inside and ignorantly commented on it, which angered the boy. He told her bluntly that he had promised to return it, so of course the contents would remain. Sarashina laughed awkwardly, apologizing for doubting him. She introduced herself as Sarashina, and the boy introduced himself as Hisui, but the conversation quickly shifted as the boy asked for Sarashina's help. He guided her and Anna down a back alley. It was there that Sarashina gasped in shock. Hisui pointed ahead and asked if she could help this one. In front of Sarashina was a divine beast lying sick on the side of the alley. Meanwhile, Solatique rode in the back of his carriage, his mind racing with thoughts. He remembered Sarashina's words, how she had called herself someone who couldn't even receive a spirit's blessing, how she believed she was incomplete. He recalled how she once told him she wasn't worthy of someone like him, a man blessed by the war god. Despite Sarashina's hesitation, Solatique knew there was nothing for her to be troubled or worried about. When his carriage finally approached his estate, he was greeted by his butler and a few passing ladies. They greeted him with a curtsy, clearly pleased by the unexpected encounter. Solatique returned their greeting, vaguely recalling the last time he had seen them. One of the women told him it was a pleasure to see him again before mentioning how disappointed her daughter had been to miss the chance to dance with him at the last banquet. Solatique smiled and offered a polite apology, but the daughter quickly stepped forward to ask if she could dance with him at the next one. Solatique's smile remained, but his voice was firm. He explained that his fiancée was not yet used to attending banquets, so he didn't want to leave her to dance with other women. The girl's mother spoke again, first acknowledging his thoughtfulness, then slyly asking if it was true that Lady Sarashina was without a blessing. She added a remark about how worrisome that would be for the country's future. Her daughter tried to interject, insisting that Lord Solitique was too kind to end an engagement over something like that. But her mother argued the importance of blessings for the nation, reminding her daughter that she was lucky to have received one from the moon god Mani. Turning back to Solitique, she asked if he agreed, but Solitique quickly shut down the conversation. Even without a blessing, he told them, Celistina was precious to him. That was precisely why the war god had blessed him, to protect his fiancée. Back in town, Celistina invited Hisui and the beast into her carriage. She told them they could return to her estate where she could arrange for a doctor. Curious, she asked Hisui what the animal's name was. His name's Toy, the boy said proudly. He explained how he had named the creature himself, and how they had been together since he was small. Toy always keeping him warm on cold days. It had always been just the two of them. Celistina smiled gently, reassuring him that everything would be fine. Divine beasts had incredibly strong life force after all. Hisui blinked in confusion. Divine beast? Celistina nodded, explaining that Toy was an extraordinary being and would recover quickly. The journey passed in relative silence. When they arrived, Celistina was greeted by the servants. She apologized for the unannounced visit, explaining that the matter was urgent. The head steward hurried forward, asking if her family was safe. Celistina assured him they were fine, though she was quickly overwhelmed by all the familiar faces. She showed them Toy, who was too weak to move. The head steward examined him closely and said it looked like the creature had been injured. They quickly prepared a room and helped Hisui carry Toy inside. Another servant escorted Celistina to rest, while the steward suggested Hisui take a bath. When the boy returned, he looked like a completely different person. Still, he seemed unimpressed, muttering about how strange nobles were for not being allowed to bathe alone. It was odd, he thought, living with a divine beast might actually make him more impressive than a heroine or a capture target. Celistina watched him, wondering if being so close to a divine beast somehow affected him. Her cheeks warmed as she thought about it. Did divine beasts warm up to anyone? She hoped Toy would be kind to her too, even though she was without a blessing. Hisui noticed her drifting off and asked what was wrong. Celistina laughed softly, admitting she was worried Toy wouldn't like her once he recovered. Hisui couldn't help but laugh. You're really worried about that? You're a noble living in a fancy mansion, he grinned. Don't worry, I've got a feeling you two will get along just fine. And my intuition's always spot on. Despite Suna's protests, Hisui insisted that Toy didn't need to be called Lord Toy just because he was a divine beast. Before long, Toy was up again, smiling sweetly at Celistina and Hisui. Celistina could hardly believe how quickly he had recovered. She smiled brightly at the fluffy, adorable creature. He was everything she had imagined. I'm so happy you're feeling better, Lord Toy, she said softly. Toy didn't respond to Celistina's call at first, and she wondered if it was because she was a villainess in the game. But Hisui reminded her not to call him Lord, just call him Toy. Despite it feeling disrespectful, Celistina reluctantly called out Toy, and the beast came up to her, woofing and smiling. He was so cute. As Celistina petted him, she couldn't help but notice how healing his fur was. She smiled, telling Hisui how happy she was to be able to touch Toy. Hisui suggested that maybe he realized she helped him, so that's why he was so attached. Breakfast was served, and Hisui was drooling over the feast. He asked if it was really okay for him to eat. Celistina told him it was fine, of course. And Hisui could feel free to eat as much as he wanted. So Hisui did exactly that, munching up everything. As he ate, Celistina thought to herself what her new friends will do next. It didn't seem like Hisui had any family, and was it really okay to toss a child like that just because the healing was done? Celistina thought to herself that even if she can't save every child without a place to go, at the very least she wanted to help the ones she's already reached out to until the end. Hisui finished and he smiled. It had been a while since he ate that much food. He thanked Celistina for everything, but of course Celistina reminded Hisui that it was him who helped her get her wallet back. But Hisui told her what she did was more than enough, even feeding him in the process. Celistina smiled, calling Hisui a good kid. Hisui told Celistina to stop treating him like a kid, announcing he was 16 years old. Celistina was beyond shocked to hear they were actually the same age. She apologized before asking Hisui if he wanted to work under her, if he was okay with it, of course. Celistina explained how she wanted to be able to live by herself in this town, but she didn't know much about it. That's why she needed Hisui to teach her. Hisui let Celistina know that he didn't know any manners, and there wasn't much he could do. But Celistina told him that everyone starts out that way. Hisui looked at Toy, who was cheerful as ever. He petted his head, taking that as a seal of approval. Hisui turned to Celistina and told her he would be down, and Celistina smiled. She was super happy that he was staying. She thanked both him and Toy for saying yes. That day, Celistina decided to visit her father. She told him that Hisui should be done changing soon. Her father smiled, surprised that the day went down the way it did. He told Celistina it was rare for her to ask for something, and Celistina apologized, but her father was pleased. But he reminded his daughter that once she was married, she won't be able to bring her butler in training to the palace. Whilst he was on the topic, he asked Celistina if everything was beginning to feel more real, considering she was to be married soon. But Celistina told her father it wasn't, her face dropping. Her father assumed it was just the usual pre-wedding jitters, but Celistina's face said it all. Her father asked if it was because of the rumors, explaining that word spread that Solitique was close with another woman. Celistina wondered if this was the heroine. Her father admitted he cleared things up with Solitique himself, which shocked Celistina. Her father explained that Solitique insisted there was no truth to the rumors, and there was no way the engagement will be broken. Celistina was confused by this, but what could she do? She told her father that if he wasn't bothered, then it must be fine. She herself knew how kind Solitique was though, so it could still be hard for him to be truthful. Her father told her how he doesn't pay attention to rumors like that. Before the conversation could continue, there was a knock at the door. It was Hisui. He introduced himself to Celistina's father. Celistina stood by her apprentice and smiled, telling her father he hadn't been trained in etiquette yet. Celistina's father introduced himself as Basel, before telling Hisui he heard all about him. Celistina smiled, announcing her butler will be employed directly by her, at least until she is married. But her father let her know they could always speak to him if they needed anything. Training began, and Celistina began by asking Hisui to address her by lady since he was working for her. Hisui told her he understood, calling her Lady Seri. Celistina guessed that he may have picked up her nickname from her father. She passed Hisui a key, telling him it was for her room, followed by a small gift. Hisui took it and thanked her, as Celistina instructed him to keep the key around his neck. As for the pocket watch, he could keep it in his inner pocket. Hisui looked at Celistina with a burning question. He asked her if she really had no divine blessing. Celistina smiled awkwardly, but Hisui looked her in the eye as if there was something else on his mind. Solitique made his way down Celistina's hallways, and Anna told him how she was in a great mood after going out. Solitique smiled, guessing it was down to his own advice he gave her, how Celistina went out. He thought he could even suggest them go out together next time. Solitique made his way to Celistina's door, pushing it open whilst calling her name. But of course he walked in on her with Hisui, who still had his hands on her shoulder. The entire situation couldn't have looked any more suspicious. Toy enjoyed himself out in the gardens. A butterfly flew and landed on his nose. He innocently played with it, waving his paws and barking when it eventually flew away. Toy looked down, sleepy. He looked so cute, finally being able to enjoy a green and spacious landscape over the dark and dingy village. Meanwhile, all hell was breaking loose inside the house. Solitique demanded to know who this guy was with his fiancée before he pulled Hisui off Celistina. Celistina told Solitique to calm down, as the boy she was with was her personal butler in training. Hisui introduced himself, guessing the crazy man was Celistina's fiancé. But Solitique was still confused over what was going on. He told Hisui that Celistina was about to marry him, so she wouldn't need a butler anymore. But Celistina explained how Hisui helped her when she was in trouble, and that was why he was here now. Despite her explaining, Solitique told her he couldn't just overlook what happened. He was pissed, and made it clear to them both. Hisui defended Celistina, telling Solitique that she wasn't doing anything improper. It was just that she looked beautiful. Of course, this only angered Solitique more. He asked Hisui if he was really trying to seduce his fiancée, but Hisui told him that he only meant that her eyes looked beautiful. It was the first time he saw someone with a divine blessing marked in their eyes. His words confused Celistina. What did he mean by divine blessing? Solitique told Hisui that he had never heard of someone having a blessing in their eyes. Hisui explained that he had seen Seri's eyes many times, and there was never anything like that. And Solitique then took a look into Celistina's eyes. He aggressively concluded that there was no mark. Celistina didn't know what to think. Maybe Hisui was just being considerate of her. She decided enough was enough and asked Hisui to go and ask Anna to prepare some tea. Hisui saw it as an opportunity to dip, but before he could, Toy wandered in. Celistina smiled and suggested they have tea together. Hisui told his beast to behave. Celistina smiled, knowing the dog was smart so there was no need to be worried. Solitique looked at the animal and he was introduced to Toy. Solitique took a closer look, thinking to himself. Perhaps he knew that Toy wasn't any ordinary dog too. Celistina explained that he was really friendly. Despite not warming up to any of the servants, he did to Solitique, who knelt down to pet him. Solitique asked Toy if he liked his mark as he brushed against his hand. Solitique recognized him as a divine beast, since he was drawn to the blessing mark. At least that's how it worked in the literature Solitique read. Divine beasts were beings everyone knew about, but their appearance was rarely seen, and they didn't know much about them. He finished by telling Celistina not to let Hisui near her too much. vaguely telling her that someone like him wasn't fit to be her butler. When Ceristina looked at him blankly, Soletique informed her that Hisui lied about seeing a mark in her eyes. But Ceristina made it clear she was not going to dismiss Hisui. She told Soletique how her wallet was stolen, which contained the precious bookmark that Soletique gave to her himself, and it was Hisui who got it back for her. She showed him the old bookmark before telling him to try not to be too cold towards Hisui. Soletique got on one knee, telling Ceristina he was pleased she treasured the bookmark, but he cared more about her than that. He asked her to not put herself in danger over something like that again. Otherwise, he may need to order her not to go outside out of worry. Ceristina didn't realize how concerned the Lord was for her. His words were really taking her by surprise. But Soletique explained that he was her fiancé, so of course he was going to worry. He asked Ceristina to at least be aware of how much he loved her. Ceristina agreed to speak to Hisui herself, gently asking Soletique to let this one go. Soletique agreed, but told Ceristina he didn't want another occasion like this to happen again. Ceristina closed the door and realized that this was a close call. She almost ended up completely smitten. She knew she needed to start managing a domain and become independent as soon as possible. A few moments passed and Ceristina ran into Hisui. He asked if she had seen Toy anywhere. Ceristina told him she hadn't seen Toy since she saw Lord Soletique off. Suddenly, Toy ran around the corner and they both asked where he had been. It was then that the butler, Mr. Hanley, drifted toward them, and they instantly saw that he was angry with leaves stuck in his hair. Mr. Hanley told them he had simply tried to put a ribbon on Toy, but Toy ran away. This led to Mr. Hanley chasing the dog all around the estate. Anna was surprised that Toy was so playful around her, mentioning that animals usually didn't warm up to her, as Hisui tied the bow around his neck. He looked super cute in the end. Even Cerishina's father was impressed by how smart Toy looked, and at least he wouldn't be mistaken for a stray. The group tried to figure out why Toy was so responsive to certain people. They remembered how he liked the mark of divine blessings, and since he was practically a sacred beast, they wondered if Toy had snuggled up to Lord Soletique because he was blessed by the rare god Tyr. It turned out that both Anna and Mr. Hanley had spirit blessings, and Cerishina's father had the blessing of the sun god Sol. Cerishina wondered if Toy was drawn to divine blessings since he was a sacred beast. But she also wondered what made Hisui fit that theory. What kind of blessing did he have? Was he telling the truth when he said that she had a blessing too? She hoped that if she truly did have a blessing, then maybe she could have her own domain someday. Cerishina turned to her father and told him she had a favor to ask. Her father suggested they discuss it in his office. There, her father said he was pleased that Ceri had been coming up with so many requests for him lately. He asked if it had something to do with Hisui, but Cerishina told him it didn't. Instead, she announced that she wanted a domain of her own. Her father was silent, and Cerishina explained that she didn't need to manage it entirely on her own. Instead, she suggested that her father lend her a portion of his domain for a while. Her father was reluctant, telling her that without a blessing, managing a domain would be difficult. Cerishina agreed it was a drawback, but she still wanted to learn how to manage one, especially since she was getting married soon. She didn't want to be called the powerless queen next to Lord Soletique. Her father asked if she had really been thinking that deeply about it, suggesting instead that he increase her tuition hours and broaden her fields of study. He told her that if she did go to the domain, neither he nor her mother could be by her side. But Ceri pleaded with her father to let her go. Eventually, her father gave in after much begging. He suggested the second district but then hesitated, worried about the conditions. Cerishina was confused by what he meant by conditions, and her father led her away to show her something. He pulled a book from his library, and to Cerishina's surprise, the book opened up the entire wall, revealing a secret room. There was nothing but a desk and a chair in the hidden room, but inside the desk was a small jewelry box. Cerishina's father unlocked it and pulled out a seed. It was the seed of the Grand Tree. He handed it to Cerishina, who looked at it carefully. It was the first time she had ever seen a seed. In the game, they always started with a sapling. She couldn't believe it when her father handed it to her. He told her that if she could succeed, the domain would remain under her care going forward. He suggested she plant it in the second district and make it bloom within half a year. With the god's blessings, the seed could bloom as soon as a month or as late as 6 months. With spirit blessings, it was said to bloom within that time frame. But each domain had one and only one grand tree planted. For someone like Cerishina, making the flower bloom within half a year seemed impossible. She didn't even know if it would sprout, but she knew she needed to try, and if she used the knowledge from the game, maybe she could make it bloom even without a blessing. She told her father she understood. She would, without fail, make the flower bloom. Meanwhile, Mr. Hanley showed Hisui around the secondary residence in the royal capital. He explained that it was where the family lived due to the master's work and circumstances. The main residence was in the capital city of the territory, Harmel. Mr. Hanley remembered how Hisui had seen the main residence and told him that the reason this place felt smaller must have been because he had seen the main one first. He showed Hisui to his room, and when Hisui learned that he had his own space, his eyes lit up. An entire room just for him and Toy. He jumped onto the bed, which even had a little dog bed next to it for Toy. They were both thrilled and thanked Mr. Hanley for everything. Mr. Hanley corrected him, instructing him to say "thank you very much" in a formal tone. Hisui copied him and was applauded for getting the hang of things. Mr. Hanley recognized that they must both be very tired today, so etiquette training could begin tomorrow. He waved Toy and Hisui off, though he was tempted to give Toy a big hug. When he left, Hisui bounced back onto his bed. He was so happy to be in a warm, safe place with no danger of the house collapsing in rainstorms. No cold, no hunger. He knew he needed to thank Lady Seri again for hiring him, but of course he remembered overhearing Solatique's warning to Celistina, how he told her not to get too close to Hisui, and that a boy like him wasn't fit to be a butler. Hisui knew he had a lot to prove, but he didn't want to get Celistina in trouble either. All he could do was take his studies and training seriously. Celistina had saved him and Toy, so he needed to give it his all for her. He told Toy his plans, and Toy woofed supportively. When Celistina returned, she told Hisui how she had discussed the territory with her father and had been entrusted with the 2nd District. Hisui asked if she really meant the 2nd District, before awkwardly wondering if it was too late to ask her father to change it. Celistina asked if something was wrong with that district, but Hisui told her it wasn't anything bad, just that there was only one tiny village there, and it had only recently been formed. Apparently, some people from the slums in Harmel had moved out and started a small village. Celistina looked shocked to hear that Harmel had slums in the first place, and Hisui reminded her that he was from a slum too. It wasn't far from Harmel town, only about an hour by carriage. Celistina thought about how her father was too busy, so he probably couldn't manage the village himself. If a child was born there, they would also need to conduct a blessing ceremony. She suggested they first relocate their base to the Harmel mansion, and Hisui asked if it would be difficult to have a mansion in such a small village. Celistina knew it would be a challenge, but she eventually hoped to have her own residence in the 2nd District. Of course it would be difficult. They would lack both materials and manpower. Maybe the best first step would be to build a distribution network. Celistina told Hisui that even if they built a residence, they couldn't just live there alone. They would need servants and maids too. She quickly realized that there was a mountain of issues. Hisui made Celistina touch grass, asking why she couldn't just use the maid she already had. Celistina explained that Anna was employed by her father, so she couldn't just take her away. Besides, she needed to find her own maid. Otherwise, she would never be independent. Hisui handed her a plate, and Celistina smiled at his mannerisms. Hisui told her he was trying to improve his speech, and Celistina teased that he still had a long way to go. She sipped her tea and suggested they report the situation in the village to her father. Meanwhile, 2 men were digging up their field, exhausted from the laborious work. An old man approached and picked up a handful of soil. As he thought, the soil wouldn't absorb water, only stones came out. He sighed, realizing the land really lacked nutrients. He thought it would be peaceful living in an uninhabited land, but there was a reason no one was here. One of the men stood, smiling regardless. He told the old man he was heading into town with Leo and the others again tomorrow for more supplies. The old man smiled back, apologizing for always causing trouble. The young man told him that thanks to him holding everything together, they had survived the past month and they were grateful. The old man chuckled, saying the young man had a silver tongue. But if they couldn't grow crops, they wouldn't survive much longer. Just then, they saw a carriage pull up. All 3 looked at it in confusion. Inside the carriage, Hisui and Suna discussed their first impressions of the place. Hisui had heard that this area had better security than the slums in town, but just in case, he would still carry Cerishina's belongings to prevent theft. Cerishina thanked him and Hisui stepped out first. Cerishina knew that if things went well, maybe they would be allowed to stay in this village after being expelled. All the more reason to make this village thrive. The moment she stepped out, Cerishina introduced herself to the curious onlookers. She told them it was a pleasure to meet them, and that she would like to meet the person who oversaw the village. The old man approached and asked if she was a Linkart. Cerishina confirmed that she was, the daughter of Marquis Bizel Linkart, who governed the territory. She bowed, and the old man was stunned to see the Marquis's daughter in person. He explained that he was the one managing things around there, introducing himself as Anton. He gathered everyone around to introduce themselves. The young man from before introduced himself as Guts, and his job was mainly building houses and farming. The younger boy introduced himself as Leo, and the 2 girls were Odette and Sophie. There were also a few young children, Giselle, Maurice, and Nina. Nina was introduced as the one who prepared meals. Cerishina smiled in delight, bending down to speak to the kids. She told them how admirable it was that they had food supplies. Anton asked Cerishina nervously if she was upset that they had built houses here without permission. but of course she was fine with it. She explained that her father had recently entrusted her with this land. Anton suggested they head inside to talk more and led her to a simple cabin. Celistina thanked them for their kindness. Anton instructed her to take a seat as he poured her a drink. He mentioned that he had heard rumors that the Marquise's daughter never left the mansion because she lacked divine blessings. He handed her the tea, which she gratefully accepted. Then Anton asked what exactly she meant by being entrusted with the second district. Celistina knew she needed to be direct with the older gentleman. She told him she wanted to grow a sacred tree in the village and manage it as the acting lord. Anton asked if she was officially recognizing the place as a proper village, and she confirmed that she was. Anton's eyes widened, and he told her how honored they were. He collapsed to his knees, bowing. He explained that they were few in number and not much help, but they were willing to do whatever they could. Celistina smiled, knowing these people simply wanted to protect their home. Even if it was step by step, she would do her best to be recognized as the acting lord. And she told Anton how much she was looking forward to working with him. She asked him to guide her so she could learn everything about the village. Anton explained that there were 7 adults in the village, 2 of whom were women. There were 7 children, both boys and girls. All were from the slums of Harmil and had no blood relations. Celistina explained to Anton that she would like to plant the sacred tree in the center of the village. She asked if that would be all right, and Anton was more than happy. He took her outside and pointed out the center. The others gathered around as Celistina announced that she would plant the seed. Of course, the event was more nerve-wracking than it seemed. Celistina told Hisui that she was getting nervous. She knew she needed to relax. Just aiming for sprouting first would be fine. She asked Hisui to pass her the seed, and he did so. Toy ran around a specific spot, and Celistina thanked him. She knew she could plant the seed right there. She gently held it between her fingers, feeling the pressure. The villagers were surprised to witness the planting of a sacred tree. They wondered if this was the first step toward improving their village. Celistina got onto her knees and dug a hole in the soft ground. She knew it would be fine, that the tree would grow strong. Sacred trees grew based on the planter's influence. She gently covered the seed with soil, and Odette passed her a watering can. Celistina thanked her and watered the soil. Then something unexpected happened. The villagers gathered closer, sensing something, and were shocked to see that the seed had sprouted. The villagers were blown away. The sacred tree had truly grown, defying all laws of nature. Anton told Celistina he couldn't believe he was witnessing it with his own eyes. Celistina looked closely at the seed, knowing that germination should have taken at least a few days. How did it sprout so quickly? Was it the power of the sacred tree? One of the children asked if this meant they could start growing vegetables, and Celistina knew she needed to gather everyone together. There she introduced herself again as Celistina Link. She announced that starting from today, she would serve as the acting lord of the second district. Celistina explained that, as the villagers had seen, the seed had sprouted successfully, so as a result, the sacred tree would surely protect and enrich the village. She called for everyone to grow together, with the sacred tree. The villagers listened and smiled. Celistina then turned to Guts and told him that she would like to go buy some crop seedlings tomorrow. Guts insisted that he didn't want to impose on her, but Celistina was more than happy to help, for the sake of the village. Guts bowed and thanked Celistina for her kindness. He warned her that the soil in the area was poor, and he was worried nothing would grow at all. Celistina reassured him it would be fine. Now that the sacred tree was planted, the other crops should follow. Guts smiled at the hopeful news. Celistina announced that she would also like a house to serve as a base of operations for the village, and the men agreed they would prepare one for her. Guts suggested a nearby area that got a lot of sunlight and had a clear view of the sacred tree. Celistina went to the carriage and asked Hisui if he could give her pouch to Mr. Anton. It contained money to have the base built. She asked Hisui if he thought it was enough, and he reassured her that it was more than enough. To his surprise, Celistina entrusted the money to him, telling him he could use it with his own initiative. Hisui was taken aback that Celistina trusted him so much already, and he asked if she was really fine with him being responsible for the money. Celistina smiled, telling him that he was her butler after all. Hisui smiled and promised he would take care of it. He instructed Toy to stay by Celistina's side and keep her safe. Celistina smiled at her new dependable bodyguard. Hisui set off to consult with Mr. Anton. When he left, Celistina remained in the carriage and knew it was time to activate the Asgard system. A screen flashed in front of her and she read through what she needed to do. She decided to take her time raising the sacred tree's level, aiming to acquire skills through the crop growing quests first. There were skills that unlocked with the tree's level, some through quests, and some through romantic events. There was also a quest to increase the number of villagers, so Celistina knew she needed to keep developing the area. The screen read that there were 15 villagers already, so that must have meant Hisui and Toy were included, right? Sarashina read through the details and was surprised to see Toy listed as the guardian divine beast. She had thought Toy was simply Hisui's companion, but now he was officially by her side. She was so happy that Toy loved her enough to do that, and she couldn't resist attacking him with hugs and pets. Not only had Toy become the guardian deity of the territory, but Sarashina had practically memorized all the unlock conditions for the Asgard system. They were practically invincible. Hisui soon returned, telling Sarashina that he had made the requests. Sarashina smiled and thanked him for his work. She had turned off the system just in time. It was then that Hisui asked if Lady Sarashina was truly a refined young lady, and Sarashina nervously asked if he had overheard her monologue just now. She stuttered in embarrassment, explaining that she was simply quite active, and that might be the impression she gave. Hisui told her it wasn't normal for a noble lady to want to manage a territory by herself, and Sarashina realized he was starting to get suspicious of her. Sarashina quickly changed the subject, explaining that she wanted to plant crop seeds first and secure food for everyone. Hisui agreed that it would be the best first step. They gazed out the window together, excited for what they were about to build. Back at the mansion, Solitique arrived, confused about where Sarashina had gone. Anna apologized, explaining that Sarashina was excited about being recently entrusted with a territory by her father. Her gown had arrived for the royal gathering, and Anna was handed the package to deliver to Sarashina. Solitique also gave her a bouquet of flowers, and Anna told him she was sure Sarashina would be delighted. Hisui and Sarashina headed out to town, and Hisui told her that her initiative was quite surprising. She took them to Harmil to buy potato seeds, as well as to look for clothes that were more comfortable for farming. It was inconvenient for her to stay in a dress all the time. Hisui asked if she was really planning on doing farm work, and Sarashina announced that she wanted to work alongside the villagers. She headed to the clothing stalls first, where she was greeted by a saleswoman. Sarashina explained that she was searching for clothes appropriate for farming, and the woman led her to a separate section. There, Sarashina asked Hisui which clothes he thought looked best, but Hisui admitted he was the worst person to ask when it came to fashion advice. Sarashina picked something out, and Hisui told her it looked nice. He searched through the racks, trying to find a longer skirt. The saleswoman offered to show her to the changing room, and Sarashina thanked her. A few moments passed, and Sarashina changed into a pretty but practical robe dress. She asked Hisui what he thought, and Hisui said it looked beautiful. Sarashina smiled and thanked him, though she was embarrassed by his compliment. They bought the dresses, and Sarashina decided to keep one on for the day. The next stop was to find the seedlings. They bought a few crates, and Sarashina offered to carry a couple, but Hisui didn't let her. He told her it wasn't the job of a feudal lord. Still, Sarashina insisted, and Hisui knew she would eventually get her way, so he passed her a single tray to carry herself. They made their way back to the village and greeted the villagers with a good morning. Anton thanked Sarashina for what she brought and announced that there had been a change in the soil. It was now super soft. Anton asked if this was really due to the power of the great tree, and Sarashina told him he was right. The great tree had blessed them with its bounty and was watching over them. She gathered everyone to begin planting the seedlings across the field. The kids smiled and eagerly took the trays, sharing the responsibility. The villagers and Sarashina worked all day, gently placing the plants into the soil. After a while, Sarashina was informed that the great tree's level had increased to 2. Hisui looked over to see Sarashina planting flowers too. She explained that it was something she wanted to do, along with planting the crops. She realized that only she could hear the announcements of the village leveling up. When the great tree reaches level 2, sweet nectar is unlocked and its scent attracts butterflies. As the skill level increases, bees, birds, and even beasts will come. In this world, honey was a luxury item, so if they could do beekeeping, the village would prosper. Sarashina could only hope that the level would rise quickly. It was then that the children spotted something in the sky. It was a butterfly. Back at the mansion, Prince Solitique was called by his butler, who asked him where he was heading. Solitique knew the venue was in the other direction, but it was his duty to escort his precious fiancée. He told the butler he was off and that he was also planning on stopping by the flower shop. His butler smiled, watching the prince hurry off. He knew Solitique was deeply devoted to Lady Sarashina. Meanwhile, Sarashina got dressed in a stunning gown. Anna helped her with her hair and makeup, telling her how beautiful she looked. She was sure Prince Solitique would be delighted too. Today was the Feast of Abundance. It was held at the royal castle and would feature the heroine as well. In other words, it was a key turning point in the story. Sarashina knew she needed to play the villainess properly today. There was a knock and Hisui entered, telling her that the carriage was waiting. He handed her a huge bouquet of flowers, saying it was from Prince Solitique. Sarashina smiled, knowing that Solitique was such a genuine soul. He sent her something even though they were about to meet. Even though his affection level for the heroine must have gone up a lot, he still gave her plenty of gifts. She then tried to remember what kind of bouquet he gave the heroine. Was it another mixed bouquet like last time? Celistina was greeted by Mr. Hanley when she walked out of her room. He announced that the prince was waiting for her at the entrance. Celistina was surprised to hear this, and Mr. Hanley asked Hisui if he had told her as instructed. Hisui admitted he didn't, and Mr. Hanley shot him a look. Celistina looked down, telling Anna that the prince didn't have to come all this way. But Anna reminded her that escorting a lady was a man's job, so she should just let him do it. Not to mention, it was clear the prince cherished Celistina greatly. Celistina walked down the stairs to see the prince looking very handsome in his attire. She knew she had nothing to lose. It's not like she wasn't going to end up hated and abandoned after all. Soletique looked just as happy to see her. Celistina curtsied, apologizing for keeping him waiting. But Soletique smoothly told her he would wait forever if it meant seeing Ceri. He complimented her dress, and Celistina told him he looked wonderful too. In fact, she was lost for words over how nice he looked. The couple arrived at the palace and soon realized that this year's harvest was bountiful. The wine and food were out of this world. Guests gathered around Prince Soletique, thanking him for their invitation and saying how much they were looking forward to it. It was then that someone caught Celisina's attention. It was the heroine. As expected, she was very pretty, but Celistina knew she couldn't leave until the greetings were over. She expected Soletique to go and approach her, but he didn't. Was it because Celistina was there? Celistina told the prince she wanted to get some air, noticing how tired he looked. Celistina knew if she went outside here, the heroine could approach him. Although Celistina felt bad taking advantage of his kindness, for their sake, the obstacle had to step aside. Soletique offered to go with her, but Celistina insisted that there were still dozens of people waiting to greet him, and that she was more than fine going alone. But Soletique told her he couldn't just leave her, especially when she appeared troubled. So the two made their way to the garden, and Celistina looked up at the stars. Soletique mentioned how he heard from her father that she had been looking after District 2. He curiously asked if it was true that it was made up mostly of people from the slums, or if it was dangerous. Celistina told him that they were good people and that they were already making progress growing vegetables. She also hoped to hold a festival once the harvest came. Soletique told Celistina that it sounded great. Celistina mentioned how she thought the villagers just wanted to live normal lives, so there was nothing for him to worry about. Soletique smiled, telling her that he would love to come and visit someday. But Celistina let him know there wasn't much there at the moment. It might take a few years until it grows. Soletique didn't mind. He wanted to see his fiancée working hard. Celistina couldn't help but look into his eyes. She wondered what would happen if the heroine saw them together. Would it interfere with anything? Celistina suggested that Soletique go back inside since it was getting cold. But of course Soletique insisted on staying with Ceri. Her plan wasn't working, and she needed to find a way to keep him from meeting the heroine. And then she heard a voice. It was the heroine. The heroine was named Lady Melia. She looked just like the typical heroine in a story, super pretty and innocent looking, and she was calling Soletique's name. Soletique got up to greet her, asking if she felt better. Celistina could only hope there was no weird misunderstanding. She got up and introduced herself, and Melia did the same. Soletique explained that Lady Melia had been recovering at her maternal family's estate until recently. He told Celistina that Melia didn't have many close friends, so he asked Celistina to take care of her. Celistina agreed, and Melia smiled. She explained that she wasn't used to these kinds of gatherings, so she brought a drink with her. Celistina chuckled, telling her if she ever needed someone to talk to, she would be happy to listen any time. It was then that Melia asked Soletique if he could dance with her. Soletique reluctantly looked at Celistina, but she ushered him to go ahead. She would rest here in the meantime. Melia thanked Celistina eagerly, but Soletique was still reluctant. He didn't want to leave Ceri alone when she was unwell. Celistina insisted she was feeling better and instead suggested that they all head back together. That way, Melia would feel more at ease. Melia took Celistina's hand, but she stumbled, spilling her drink all over her dress. Soletique asked his maids to take Lady Melia to the guest room and prepare her a new dress. Celistina had to think quickly, and it turned out she was the one who made the drink spill. She didn't intend on getting herself splashed too, but with this, the heroine and Prince Soletique would be alone in the guest room. But to her horror, Soletique swept her up in his arms and declared that he would be taking Ceri with him. Of course, considering how the game was supposed to go, this was a pretty big issue for Ceri. Back in the mansion, Hisui gazed out the window, wondering how Lady Ceri's night was going. He imagined her dancing, or maybe even eating something delicious. He wondered what the banquet food was like. Back at the banquet, Soletique asked Melia if she was all right. Melia told him she was fine, just surprised because she was suddenly pulled. Soletique was shocked that Celistina acted so roughly toward Lady Melia. It was not something he signed up for. And in that moment, he turned to Celistina and told her straight that she was not suitable to be his fiancée. And like that, the engagement was called off. Celistina knew that this was fate. The Villainess should have been expelled, leading to the happy ending. But then, reality hit. And that was not what happened at all. Instead, Celistina found herself in Solitik's arms, being carried romantically through the party. Despite Celistina insisting that she could walk by herself, Solitik told her there was no need to walk. Celistina knew there was a need though. She couldn't have the heroine misunderstanding her. If her favorability dropped, she would be sentenced to death. Celistina asked Solitik if it was really okay not bringing Melia, but Solitik told her he left it in the maid's hands. His fiancée was more important. Celistina couldn't help but get flustered, especially when Solitik ordered a new dress. He asked Celistina if she was feeling cold, considering the drink spilled on her too. Celistina insisted she was fine, that she only got a little wet, but she was sorry for staining the dress he got for her. Solitik told her not to worry about it. Celistina admired the roses displayed in the room, and Solitik asked if she liked them. Celistina smiled and told him she did. She asked if he was in charge of decorating the guest room, but he corrected her, saying it was her room. Celistina smiled, realizing they were for her. She promised to take good care of them. But Solitik could still sense her hesitation, and he asked if she even liked roses, otherwise he could return them. But Celistina told him that wasn't true. Now that she thought about it, the guest room she used always had roses, and all the bouquets she received were roses too. Celistina couldn't help but ask if Solitik ever gave flowers to others. Solitik explained he needed to because of his position, but roses were only for Ceri. He didn't want to give anyone else roses. And then Ceri realized, she thought he just didn't want to bother thinking about the different types of flowers. Solitik then brought up the day he went to the florist in town. He told Celistina how they left the arrangement styles to the staff and they had great taste. He told her that Lady Melia was happy too. Celistina asked him if he often gave flowers to Lady Melia, and Solitik told her no. It was just that they met by chance and he gave her a bouquet as thanks. Celistina asked what he meant by his thanks, and he explained that Melia actually helped him find a gift to give to Ceri. He sank into his hands, realizing he ruined his own surprise. It turned out that Lady Melia recommended a popular ornament shop to him, and the flowers were a thank you for that. He asked her to keep it a secret from Ceri too, but of course he ruined the surprise. Celistina could only think that it was a pity that day wasn't a date. This entire night really was not going to plan. Celistina looked into Solitik's eyes and told him that she was happy someone cared this much. She told him not to worry about ruining the surprise. Solitik told her that next time he wanted to go to the same florist with her. There was a knock at the door, and a new dress was prepared. Solitik thanked the maids and told Celistina he would wait here while she changed. So Celistina went to get ready. It was then that she noticed the dress. It was the same dress the heroine wore. Celistina was too stunned to speak. She genuinely thought this would be impossible. The maid noticed her apprehension and asked if Celistina didn't like it, but Celistina told her it was so beautiful she was only surprised. The maid smiled, telling Ceri she was glad she was satisfied. In the game, the heroine definitely wore it, and Celistina didn't understand how this came to be. She put the dress on and looked at herself in the mirror. It was lovely. The maids left Celistina alone in the room, and she could only exhale sharply, wondering how things had gone so not according to plan. She knew she needed to hang in there. Not long now until she could return to the village, back where everything was predictable and within her control. She opened the door, mustering up the courage to face everyone. Of course, she needed to face Solitik first. He asked her if she was okay, and Celistina told him she was fine. He then took her hair gently and told her how beautiful she looked. Of course, her dress from earlier was lovely, but this look suited her well too. He asked if she was ready to return to the party, and Celistina agreed. But to her surprise, Solitik announced they could leave early tonight. And as expected, the entire crowd's attention was drawn to Celistina. Celistina looked down in embarrassment as Lady Melia approached her. Celistina smiled and told Melia she was pleased she was unharmed before apologizing for her carelessness. Melia insisted she was fine with a smile, and Celistina took the opportunity to make what could be taken as an improved suggestion. She asked Solitik if she could dance with him, and Solitik said yes quicker than lightning. He took Celistina's hands and asked if she would do him the honor. So Celistina excused herself from Lady Melia, who acted unbothered. But you could see her face drop when Celistina walked hand in hand with the prince. Celistina tried to savor the moment. She knew it would be sad if Solitik did end up with Melia, but ultimately everything was out of her control now. As they danced, Solitik gazed lovingly into Celistina's eyes. In that moment, she knew it would be fine. Her heart was ready. Solitik and Celistina danced the night away. As expected of the prince, his movements were perfected, and Celistina was a great dancer too. Celistina and Solitik attracted a few admiring eyes as they moved gracefully around the ballroom. However, it was clear that they also caught the attention of a few jealous onlookers, who criticized Celistina for being too submissive in the dance, saying Solitik was the one doing all the leading. Celistina could hear them, and of course she began to fret over whether it was true or not. But Solitik quickly reassured her, letting her know that her steps were truly light and feminine. He told her that he loved dancing with her. Celistina smiled and told him she loved dancing with him too. Before meeting the heroine and even now, Solitik's attitude had not shifted in the slightest. In the game, it was pretty obvious how he felt toward Melia, unless he was only pretending he still liked Celistina now. Celistina told herself that if the engagement was broken, then she certainly wouldn't be dancing with him right now. Solitik noticed Celistina zoning out and asked if she was tired. Celistina told him she was okay. She was just worried about spilling her champagne on Lady Melia. Celistina requested that Solitik go and speak with her, as it would be nice for the crown prince to express some words of concern. Not to mention, Melia was in clear view staring at the couple. Celistina admitted that she felt sorry for making Solitik apologize in her place, but Solitik told her it was fine. In his head, he was just happy that Ceri relied on him. But Celistina had other thoughts. This would be an opportunity for the heroine and the love interest to dance without guilt. Celistina watched her fiancé walk toward Melia and take her hand. But Melia was an awful dancer, stepping on Solitik's feet and everything. Of course, the crowd was even more critical of Melia compared to Celistina. Celistina wondered if it was a good thing Melia didn't know how to dance. Men did like to teach, after all. And just as it seemed like they were making progress, Melia fell entirely to the floor, completely ruining what Ceri thought would be the perfect romantic moment between the heroine and the hero. It was then that the penny dropped that the dance was not going to continue. A couple of maids helped Melia up, and Celistina rushed over to ask if she was all right. Melia apologized, but Celistina told her that it was a difficult dance anyway. One of the maids offered to guide Melia to the restroom to get cleaned up, and Solitik asked Celistina if they should accompany her. Celistina apologized for asking Solitik to take Melia's hand, calling him a gentleman regardless. Solitik chuckled, telling her Melia fortunately didn't step too hard on his toes. Celistina knew she needed to think fast before telling Solitik that she was not feeling too well today. Solitik apologized like crazy, telling her they could go home immediately, but Celistina told him no, she would be happy to go home alone. She told Solitik that Lady Melia must be heartbroken, so she asked Solitik to go and cheer her up. Solitik told her that he would if that was what she wanted, and Celistina thanked him for listening. She knew that by taking care of Melia, Solitik must begin to feel something toward her, just as the game was meant to go. So Celistina reached home, and she was welcomed back by Hisui. Hisui asked if Solitik was with her, but Celistina told him that Solitik was actually concerned about a woman named Lady Melia. Hisui wondered what she meant, as Celistina continued to say that they danced. Lady Melia fell, so Solitik accompanied her. Of course, Hisui saw nothing but red flags, asking Celistina if she was really fine with that, but Celistina let him know it was all because she requested it. Celistina asked Hisui how he was settling in. She also heard that Anna had been praising him. She asked if he had been reading much, and Hisui told her he was still learning. He admitted that he wanted to study in his spare time to repay the favor. He didn't want to embarrass Lady Celistina over his lack of studying. Celistina smiled, noticing how responsible Hisui was for his age. Anna passed Hisui a tray of tea, and Hisui explained that Celistina was tired and would be going to bed soon. Anna smiled and told Hisui they would enjoy the tea themselves then. Meanwhile, Celistina had changed into her nightgown and collapsed onto her bed. She smiled, thinking that from tomorrow she would be free again, and she could continue working on the village. Leveling up the great tree and acquiring skills was important, but she wanted to raise skill levels quickly. She activated the gaming system, which informed her that in order to level up Sweet Nectar, she needed to plant various kinds of flowers and grow enough of each to make a small flower field. Celistina thought to herself that if she were to do that, the crop yield would decrease, and the blessing of abundance couldn't level up. But once it reached level 2, bees would gather around the great tree, enabling beekeeping. If they could get a lot, they could make it a village specialty. She also needed to think of a village name. Once approved by her father and the king, it would then be on the map. Celistina shut down the tablet, knowing there was still so much to work on, and of course, she still had the festival to think about. Celistina arrived at the village the following day and she was greeted by Anton. The villagers bowed as Celistina approached. Celistina could see immediately how well the potatoes had grown, and they would be ready for harvest in a few days, something she was really looking forward to. Not to mention the flowers. Nina brought some flowers to plant around the great tree, and Celistina smiled, offering that they work on them together. But Celistina then realized that the family was already working on something, which ended up being a basket of vines. Toy bolted through the field and Hisui ran after him so he wouldn't destroy all the work he did. It was then announced that the Sweet Nectar skill level had reached 2, with bees and butterflies gathering in the field. Celistina smiled, but of course the villagers freaked out. Celistina told them not to be scared. The bees were called flower bees. They didn't sting humans or animals. Guts realized it was true. The bees were only flying around but not attacking. Flower bees gathered nectar from flowers to make honey, and if you provided flowers, coexistence was possible too. Odette asked if Celistina meant that sweet stuff when she mentioned honey. And Celistina smiled and said yes. But in order to harvest honey, they needed a beehive first. Celistina told the villagers that if they built one quickly, honey could be harvested in as little as 3 days, in the game world. Hisui was shocked at how quickly they could have honey, and the villagers immediately began cracking on with the beehive. Guts showed Celistina some lumber and she told him it would work before asking if it was possible to build 5 beehives. They needed square boxes first, lined with mesh. That way the bees could build combs where the honey would be stored. Guts smiled and began the job. Hisui admitted he was really looking forward to the honey. Sari rubbed her irritated skin as Hisui asked if her mark still hadn't disappeared. He advised her to leave it alone, saying it would probably be fine once they reached the village. Hisui chuckled, realizing Celistina had fallen asleep at her desk. She was up super late thinking of names for the village. Hisui asked if that meant she had come up with a good idea, and Celistina asked for his input. Hisui suggested Celistina Village, and Sari soon realized that Hisui might have even less sense than her. She definitely couldn't name it after herself. Meanwhile, Melia's maids gathered outside her bedroom concerned for their lady. They knocked, and Melia could be seen absent-mindedly gazing out the window. Until recently, she was frail and couldn't go outside. Her only friends were the guard knights. Even so, Melia never complained and always smiled. Her maids discussed how she was supposedly teased at the ball after tripping while dancing. She wasn't injured, and she was pleased anyway that she got to dance with the prince and was even escorted home afterward. The maids wondered what was going on in Melia's head, who seemed so out of it that no one knew what her next move would be. The truth was, Melia wanted to dance more with Solitique. She wanted to talk to him more. If she were Celistina, she would never leave his side. Melia turned to her assistant Sarah, asking why Celistina wasn't often with Prince Solitique. Sarah explained that people often pointed fingers at Celistina, so she could only attend certain balls, and was mostly kept out of the public eye. When Melia asked why, Sarah revealed that it was because Celistina did not have a blessing. Of course, that meant most people were against her being the prince's fiancée. But regardless, her father entrusted a territory to Celistina. At the village, the beehives were ready and 3 days passed, which meant it was finally time for honey. The villagers gathered excitedly as Guts was brave enough to open the hives. He thoroughly trusted Celistina's words that the bees were friendly, so he opened one up, only to be met by an army of bees. They managed to get the crates out and pour the delicious golden honey into jars. Hisui helped out, asking if Guts was okay after the scary encounter. Celistina smiled, and Hisui noticed that her marks from sleeping on her desk had also faded. Odette noticed Celistina touching her cheek and asked if she was fine, and Celistina quickly announced that she was thinking of a name for the village, but she would need everyone's opinion too. The villagers looked at her, astounded. They hadn't even considered naming the village. Sophie suggested Nino Village, and the kids suggested Honey Village or Potato Village. Anton suggested using Celistina's name. Celistina turned to Hisui and asked if he had any good ideas, and he suggested Saren. Celistina was flustered and suggested it might be better to capture a feature of the space instead, but the villagers loved the name and insisted on using Saren Village. Celistina blushed and knew she had to let the villagers have their way. So it was confirmed, the village was called Saren. In that moment, the tree grew considerably, as did the quest, territory naming, unlocking a new skill. Guts announced that the leaves were already starting to turn yellow. Celistina began to worry. Did this mean the plants were lacking nutrients? But Guts told her that potatoes are harvested when the flowers wither and the leaves start turning yellow. Celistina smiled and suggested they harvest the potatoes tomorrow. Hisui announced that they had finished gathering the honey and decided to begin preparing. Celistina asked Odette if she wanted to help cook up some pancakes. So they began, and the villagers had sadly never had pancakes before, although they had heard how delicious they were. Celistina smiled as she taught Odette how to place the batter on the stove and flip them perfectly. The first pancake was done, and Celistina suggested they try it. Eventually, food was served, and Odette and Celistina topped the pancakes with honey. The villagers gathered around and ate in the fields, grateful for the delicious food. Anton announced that he never imagined he could eat something this good at his age, all thanks to Lady Celistina. But Celistina let him know it was thanks to everyone working hard together. Even Toy was excited to try a little. Hisui told Celistina that he was glad everyone was happy, and Celistina agreed. Maybe being a villainous young lady wasn't so bad after all. Night fell in the village, and Sophie and Odette couldn't stop thinking about how delicious the pancakes were. But they knew today was a special treat. They were far too conscious about their health and weight to let themselves imagine eating pancakes every day. Of course, tomorrow would be the potato harvest, so they had that to look forward to as well. Suddenly, there was a strange sound, and the girls sensed some activity outside their house. Odette looked out of the window and saw that someone was there. She called Sophie over, wondering who could be visiting at such a late hour. Inside the carriage was Lady Melia. Night passed and morning came, marking the day of the potato harvest. The villagers gathered around excitedly. Hisui laughed, asking if Celistina was going to get her hands dirty as well. It turned out that after Celistina had left the other day, an unexpected guest had arrived. It was supposedly a person named Sarah, asking one question after another. When Guts told Sarah that Lady Celistina wasn't around, she left immediately. Celistina wondered who she was. She hadn't heard of anyone planning to visit, and the guest should have at least informed her beforehand if they were coming. Guts told her that the guest mentioned she would return another day. Celistina pulled out a potato and quickly realized how tough it was. It felt like she was already cramping up from the work. Meanwhile, the men got through several patches faster than Celistina could catch her breath. She chuckled, noticing she had already reached her limit after picking out only 3 potatoes. Hisui told her sternly that this was no job for a lady like her and that she didn't need to do it. Mr. Guts was super impressive, doing almost the entire harvest alone. He couldn't help during the honey harvesting, so he was probably trying his best to make up for it. From afar, Anton called to Guts, telling him not to overdo it. Celistina also told him to be careful. She wandered up to Toy and petted him, thanking him for all his hard work too. Celistina thought it might be time to focus on cooking. She linked up with Odette, who seemed troubled. Celistina asked if she was okay or if she was feeling unwell. Odette admitted she actually felt kind of happy. The fields and beekeeping were going well, the villagers could eat delicious food, and she could enjoy life with everyone. Feeling happy made her so joyful that she cried. Odette thanked Celistina for transforming the space. Of course, Celistina was overjoyed by Odette's words. Hearing her say that made Celistina feel truly pleased too. Meanwhile, a strange carriage rode through the land. Inside was Lady Melia and Sarah, ready for a second round of harassing Celistina. They realized that going to the village late at night was probably not a good idea, and it might be better to visit during the day. Melia asked if Celistina would be there today, and Anna told her that she was harvesting potatoes, so she would probably be around during the day. Melia told Anna how Celistina was growing a large tree and that buds were already beginning to sprout. She asked Sarah if it was really possible for plants to sprout without blessings, and Sarah admitted that she didn't think it was possible. Sarah looked out of the window, appearing as lost as ever. She declared that she also wanted her own large tree. Sarah looked at Melia, unsure what to say. Melia wanted to ask Lady Celistina about the tree and also about her true feelings for Lord Solitique. She remembered that night and thought that by growing a splendid large tree with the power of the god of fertility, she could enrich the territory. Then, of course, Lord Solitique would choose her for the sake of the country. Melia held her hands together anxiously. Meanwhile, at the village, lunch was served. It consisted of a delicious plate of potatoes with butter and chips. Thanks to Mr. Guts, they harvested a lot so they could still make more. The villagers gathered around the new table they had constructed, excited to eat after a long, hard day of work. Celistina then heard something, a familiar voice. She turned around to see Lady Melia. Lady Melia was waving and smiling like she had just come across a long-lost best friend. Talk about fake, she was contemplating stealing Celistina's man a few seconds ago. Celistina scrambled to her feet and welcomed Melia warmly. She asked her what she was doing there, and Celistina told her she had just made some potatoes and chips from the recent harvest. She offered some to Melia, who smelled the freshly made chips. Of course, she couldn't resist, despite Sarah telling her not to eat something she hadn't seen prepared herself. Melia was blown away by how delicious the chips were. She asked Celistina if there was any chance she could have another. Of course, Celistina was kind as ever, offering as much as Melia liked. Melia was so distracted by the chips that she didn't have enough time to come up with an excuse for why she came to the village. So when Celistina asked what brought her to the territory, she could only say that she had heard Celistina was managing the land, so she came out of pure curiosity. She admitted that she was very surprised that the large tree had already grown so much, and the village management also seemed to be going smoothly, which was reassuring. Celistina smiled, telling Melia that it was all thanks to everyone's contributions that she was able to get to this stage. It was then that Melia asked the big question, if she could also grow the large tree with Celistina. Celistina smiled awkwardly, asking Melia to repeat herself. Did she really just say that she wanted to grow the large tree together? Melia smiled with no shame and said yes. She told Celistina that if someone with blessings like her joined, the tree would grow quicker, and of course that would only make everything better. Before Celistina could say anything, Melia had already decided she was going to introduce herself to the villagers. She wandered over to them, introducing herself as Melia Saltamari, and explained that she had been granted blessings by the god of fertility, Frey. She continued to announce that with her blessings, this village would grow strong and prosperous. The villagers knew no better. They were blown away by Melia's words. Celistina heard that anyone blessed by the gods admired the great tree. Even though Lady Melia had no ill intentions, to suddenly show up unannounced was one thing, but to want to be with the great tree was another. Why in the first place was she leaving Solitique to come here? Hisui asked Sarashina if she was feeling okay, but Sarashina's head was throbbing with stress. Sarashina told Anton she wanted to sit down and have tea with Lady Melia and asked if it was possible to borrow a room. It was there that Lady Melia was formally introduced to the new village, Tezrin. Melia commented that she had heard it was a nameless village, but she thought it was lovely that it had the same resonance as Lady Tezrashina's name. She then asked if the village was already on the map. Tezrashina said no, but that they would be applying for that next. Melia mentioned that she heard from Solitique that the great tree was very precious and not something easily obtained. Tezrashina said yes, and Melia went silent. Sarashina explained that the great tree of the village was a precious gift from her father, and she had no intention of growing it together with anyone else. Melia apologized, saying that she got carried away wanting to try growing her own tree. Terashina told Melia she knew she was blessed, so she understood her feelings, but if she knew what would happen if Melia and Solitique were to be married, Melia looked truly guilty, and she knew she should apologize. But what Melia blurted out next was completely out of the blue. She told Terashina she was in love with Solitique. Terashina and Hisui went silent. Of course Terashina already knew that, but it was annoying that Melia had blurted it out loud. She knew she technically could not say much, but Melia had left her with no choice. Terashina told Melia that she understood her feelings, but Solitique was her fiancé and he loved her. She firmly told Melia she would pretend she never said that, so she should put a lid on her feelings too. Of course it was harsh, but Terashina needed to put this girl in her place. She continued, saying that despite the two of them being close in age, they were not friendly. Terashina was the daughter of a marquis and also held the position of acting lord of the 2nd district. Of course Melia's straightforward nature might make her strong, but if she truly wished for Solitique's bride's position, she must study. Melia breathed out, saying yes. Sarashina finished her lecture by instructing Melia not to come unannounced again. It was fine this time, but if she did it with anyone else, they might protest. Melia looked surprised to hear that, commenting on how Solitique never seemed to care. Sarashina could only bite her lip. Lady Melia admitted that she felt like a clueless child and said she would take her leave for today. Even though Sarashina was harsh, she was thankful to her. She told Sarashina she would study harder to be worthy of Solitique. She smiled warmly. Sarashina watched as she left. Even if it was just for show, Terashina needed Melia to control her feelings. Terashina made her way back to the villagers, apologizing for the excitement. She knew she should have asked for their opinion before outright rejecting Melia, but she could not accept it. If Melia was preoccupied with the great tree and did not progress with Lord Solitique, it would be a bad ending. And if she were executed, then what would happen to the village? The villagers were understanding, telling Terashina they accepted her as the lord of the territory. The girls commented that Melia was quite unsettling anyway. Terashina smiled, grateful that her people understood. A report came in for the 2nd district, and Terashina's father was told that Terashina was waiting in her study. The letter concerned Lady Melia of the Saltomarl Count family, and her father knew he needed to speak to Terashina first. If the issue could not be resolved, however, then she would need to give up her position and undergo queen education instead. Terashina updated him on what had happened in her village, how the flowers had attracted bees and how potatoes were currently growing, with the potential for other roots in the future. She smiled, hoping her father could try them someday. She also excitedly told him how they had decided on a name, Tezrin. It was all good news, but Sarashina did have a request. She asked her father if he could approve Tezrin village as soon as possible, as she wanted to set up a stall with dishes using the potatoes harvested in the village. Her father looked down, telling Tezrashina he knew how hard the village had worked, so tomorrow they would start the procedures within the territory. From the day after tomorrow, she could act freely within the territory. Tezrashina smiled ear to ear, excitedly thanking her father. Regarding Lady Melia, Tezrashina had sorted it all out independently, and her father was beyond proud. His butler could not believe how Tezrashina, who felt like a baby just yesterday, had become so accomplished. Tezrashina woke up bright and early, stretching in the sunlight. Starting today, Tezrin village would be on the map, and notices would go out to each town so they could finally trade. Tezrashina knew that if they were going to sell potato dishes, it was the perfect time since they had harvested so many. She could not wait to go to the village. She knew that if anyone saw how much she was smiling, they would certainly be freaked out. She tried to compose herself but decided to go back to the privacy of her room to freak out in private. Of course Hisui saw the whole thing. At the village, Sarashina was welcomed by Odette, who began to wash and pack the potatoes. Sarashina complimented them on their impeccable work, but Toy was whimpering like crazy. Hisui could only guess it was because he wanted potatoes, and Sarashina wondered if beasts were even allowed them. Toy began to drool, staring at the delicious spuds. Sarashina asked Odette if Toy could have a boiled potato, and Odette took him away. Sarashina announced that they would be setting up a food stall in Halmel today. The villagers were super excited, having never traded before. Sarashina explained that this time they would be selling potato chips. They could bag them individually and sell them for 200 lus. The villagers thought it was a wonderful idea. Suddenly, Terashina heard an announcement that she had acquired a new skill. She remembered that you gain skills by offering harvested goods to the divine beasts. A stronger divine beast helps drive off harmful beasts that come to the village. She wanted to activate the system and check immediately what the skill was. She petted Toy, who was super pleased. Later on, she checked in with the clerk who arranged the stall rental. It included a magic stove, but it would cost 3,000 lus. Celistina asked for one this time, and she was handed a ticket. When she left, the clerk complimented her on how elegant and refined she was. Her colleague let her know that she was actually a noble Lady Celistina. At the stall, Celistina began setting up. She attached a sign and laid out a few bags. Toy helped out, holding a sign around his neck. He made such an adorable mascot. Celistina called out, advertising the potato chips from Tezrin village. Of course, this sparked some intrigued looks from people who had never heard of the village, nor potato chips. But unfortunately, no one was interested. Odette and Celistina began to worry as Celistina tried again. One person asked if the village was new, and said they had heard about it through a post at the office. Odette smiled, pleased that someone knew about the village. That alone made her super happy. She told the gentleman it was a Tezrin village specialty and that he should try a chip. The man was apprehensive, thinking they were too small and thin, not enough to fill him up. Celistina urged him to just try for now. When he saw Celistina, he immediately stuck his hand in before asking if she was a noble. He noticed her neat clothes and light hair, but then he asked if that meant she had no blessing. Celistina looked down in disappointment. Before today, she had forgotten this feeling, and she began to wonder if she should stay at the front of the stall. But her people came to her defense, saying that she was the founder of Tezrin and that she provided them with jobs. It did not matter if she had a blessing or not. Odette added that Lady Celistina kindly extended her hand to them when they could not even make a day's living. Celistina was taken aback by Odette's passionate speech. When she had suddenly become acting lord, they had welcomed her. It was she who had been helped. She smiled, thanking Odette for sticking up for her, but Odette apologized for ruining her temper. She began to sob, which should have been a bad thing, but it started to attract more onlookers. Odette wept, and Celistina told the men she accepted their apologies. She kindly told them to lift their heads. The men suddenly became fans of Celistina, telling her she was like a goddess of sweetness. Celistina laughed awkwardly, telling them they did not need to exaggerate. She turned to Hisui, telling him to tell them. Hisui smiled. He called Celistina beautiful and said he understood why these men were calling her a goddess. He walked up to the men, shoving the chips into their mouths to shut them up. The men were instantly impressed with the snack. It was unlike anything they had tried before, and they even wanted to buy some. Celistina thanked them, and in no time they became busy. A whole crowd had come to try the famous potato chips. Celistina smiled, watching everyone enjoy the chips. The day went much better than anticipated, as they sold out of the chips, which was pretty good considering it was their first time. Hisui suggested they try increasing the numbers tomorrow and add more helpers too. It was a plan. The next morning, Celistina woke up super exhausted. She checked her stats and saw that they had leveled up. By selling the village's harvest, she had successfully gained another skill, combined with toys from yesterday, which was a huge step forward. The great tree was almost waist-high now, and if it kept growing like this, she would be able to fulfill her promise to her father. There was a knock at the door, and Celistina told them to come in. It was her maids who came with a letter from Celistina. Celistina looked up, believing today was the day her engagement would be annulled. A letter had arrived from Lord Celistina, summoning her to the royal capital. Although she had not heard anything directly, she assumed that Malia and Celistina were going on secret dates. Lady Malia had also been studying etiquette, so for now it seemed that she had not made any major mistakes. Celistina imagined her living her life in peace, with this major obstacle being resolved. Celistina sat in the carriage with Celistina. Her maid wished them a farewell as they set off to Celistina's surprise. Celistina was smiling ear to ear. He told Celistina that it had been a while since they had gone out together outside of evening parties, then asked her about Lady Melia going to her village. Celistina quickly told Celistina that Melia had come on her own. Was Celistina angry with her because of her harsh words toward Lady Melia? But Celistina's smile turned upside down. It turned out he was only jealous that he had not been invited to the village yet. Celistina quickly told him it was only because it was not yet in a state worthy of showing him. She did not want him to be bored. But Celistina told her that he knew how hard she was working on the village, so there was no way he would be unimpressed. He reminded her that they were going to be husband and wife, so she should not worry about such small things. Celistina realized she had completely misunderstood the situation. All she could say was yes. To make matters worse, Celistina announced that he had arranged for the carriage to take them to the village right now. He told Celistina that he had gotten permission from the Marquis, so it was technically no problem. They continued to talk on the way, and Celistina mentioned how dependable Lady Melia was. Celistina frowned, confused as to why Celistina brought her up so suddenly. Celistina was surprised that Celistina suddenly seemed so flat. She explained that she simply thought Melia was a very active and pure-hearted person. Since she had not gone out much from the estate, she might feel something close to admiration for that. Celistina laughed, saying she was quite one to talk. Compared to Lady Melia, he thought Celistina was far more active as deputy lord. From now on, Celistina should gain even more experience than Lady Melia. Celistina knew there were still things she wanted to do, including traveling abroad. She told Celistina that thinking about all the things they could do from now on made her feel excited. Celistina took both of her hands and told her that he would always be by her side, and together they would see all the things she wanted and make the country even better. Celistina smiled and told him yes. Even now, when he was close with Lady Melia, if he still said things like this to Celistina, she did not know how she would keep up her act. She looked out the window, hoping it would at least be a gentle annulment. They were greeted by Toy, and Celistina wondered where Hisui was. She guessed that because Celistina was here, he was keeping his distance today, especially after what had happened before. Celistina received a notification that the Great Tree's level had increased to 4, and she was so excited she nearly screamed. Celistina asked her if everything was alright, and Celistina awkwardly said that she had not expected to be going to the village, so she wore heels. But then Celistina said that he had something prepared. He smiled when he saw the others who had come as well. Celistina was surprised by how developed Tezrin was, and when Celistina looked up she could even see some tourists. She quickly understood that the condition for level 4 was tourist visiting. She smiled, feeling fulfilled. Not long ago, this was a village no one ever came to. Celistina and Celistina walked toward Mr. Anton, whose face lit up when he saw Celistina. She introduced him to Celistina, who called himself Celisina's fiancé. He smiled, telling Mr. Anton that he had heard the village was improving day by day. Mr. Anton bowed, reassuring Celistina that he would do his utmost to support Celistina. The man with him introduced himself as Nicholas, a merchant from Halmel. He told Celistina and Celistina that it was an honor to meet them. He explained that today he had come to request permission to open a branch office in the village. Celistina was surprised to hear this. The company he was from, Pico Trading Company, was a major firm even in Halmel. She knew this would be a huge benefit for the village. Nicholas told them that he had been deeply impressed by the chips he tasted at the market the other day. How crispy and salty they were, like a jewel of taste. Celistina giggled, telling Nicholas she was pleased he liked them. She added that she was also familiar with the Pico Trading Company. Celistina turned to Anton, telling him that she would be leaving the rest of the decision to him. Anton placed his hand on his heart, reassuring her that he would take care of it. Celistina was surprised that Celistina was not going to listen to any more of the conversation, but she told him that from now on she would not be able to be involved in everything. Whatever could be entrusted, she planned to ask the villagers to handle more and more. Celistina understood. Since the Linkart family was above them, he was sure they would not try anything improper. He laughed, telling her that they now knew he was her fiancé too, so they would offer terms favorable to the village. They both decided to check on the great tree next. The tree looked great, growing strong and healthy. Of course it was still small, but Celistina could tell it was being cared for with great love. Celistina was super pleased to be praised. It genuinely touched her heart hearing Celistina's words of approval. She told Celistina she was truly happy that even she, without a blessing, could raise the great tree like this. Celistina got down on one knee and kissed Celisina's hand. He told her he was proud to be her fiancé, but then they suddenly heard a familiar voice. It was Melia. Celistina looked pretty upset to see her, and he asked Celistina if she had an appointment with her today. Celistina said no. When Melia came running up to them, Celistina flatly told her he did not expect to see her here. Melia told him, without shame, that when she went to the castle she heard he had gone out with Celistina, so she worked out it must be here. She went on to say she wrote a letter to Celistina to tell her she would be coming immediately. She smirked, saying the letter would have been delivered to the mayor after they left, so she technically followed proper etiquette. Celistina tried to hold her tongue, knowing she needed to word things nicely but more clearly once again, but Celistina beat her to it. He asked her why she sent such a meaningless letter. Melia began to sweat. She stuttered that she just wanted to get along better with both of them, Celistina and Celistina. She asked if it was truly too sudden before apologizing. Celistina knew this whole situation was a headache, making it appear as though she was bullying Melia. Melia bowed her head, saying Celistina would not forgive her. She snarkily asked if a marquise's daughter could accept an apology. Celistina took a breath and forced a smile. She told Melia not to worry about it, that everyone makes mistakes. She reminded her to be careful from now on though. Melia thanked Celistina, and Celistina added that he would overlook it too if Celistina was fine. However, he reminded her how rude it was to drop by unannounced. He also told Melia that he and her were not that close, so if she wanted to see either of them, sending a letter in advance was the proper way. Melia argued that when she went to the royal castle, no one said anything to her, but Celistina told her that those areas were free to others. Celistina was also losing patience with her. Melia said she would be careful from now on, looking disappointed in herself. Celistina hoped this would be the last of Melia's strange behavior. Melia smiled, saying she would like to make amends for the trouble she had caused. Celistina wondered if she even knew how to make amends, so she told her it was a kind gesture, but she really did not mean to. Melia turned to her attendant Sara before announcing she had the blessing of Freyr, the god of abundance. She prayed for Lady Celisina's great tree to grow. Celistina watched anxiously as Melia took out some kind of potion. Celistina rushed to stop her, with Melia claiming it was water she purified with her prayer. She dropped it onto the tree, which immediately bloomed a flower, a black flower. Melia looked up in excitement, asking Solitique if he saw her blessing, but Tereshina was beyond furious. What had this girl done? Solitique mentioned that he had never seen a great tree with a black flower. Tereshina looked down, completely defeated. All this work and effort just for Melia to come along and ruin it. Suddenly, Hisui appeared, yelling at Tereshina to go under the great tree and touch the flower. Tereshina rushed over, holding the flower in her hand. It was then that two options appeared. Either A, for Tereshina to leave the tree to be Melia's, or B, to make it her own by blooming a brand new flower. Tereshina was left with the flower in her hands, not sure what any of this meant. Melia gasped, telling Tereshina that her eyes had changed color. Tereshina knew that meant this was something only she could see. She did not know how it could be possible for another flower to bloom. Toy came running over, barking at the flower. Tereshina tried asking him if that meant it was okay. She began to cry, imagining the worst, but then she called for a new flower. She decided that the flower would be hers, and then like magic a white flower rose, replacing the black one. Tereshina, with tears streaming down her eyes, looked at the flower in admiration. Solitique rushed over, hugging Tereshina. He told her he had never seen a flower this beautiful, just like Tereshina. Tereshina smiled, embracing Solitique. Melia was stunned. She breathed that her flower had turned white. But then Tereshina stood up. She confronted Melia for what she did. She told Melia that the tree was hers and she did not want her interfering. Melia told Tereshina she was only trying to help the great tree grow as an apology. She claimed that with the blessing of the god of abundance it would grow all at once, and she was shameless enough to add that she wanted Solitique to be happy. Tereshina was enraged. Melia quickly added that she thought it would make Tereshina happy too, and she rubbed in that she wanted to pray for her blessings at work. Tereshina told Melia noble etiquette was not as simple as that and that she should have consulted Count Saltiamar, her father. But Melia snarkily said this was something between friends, so there was no need to get her father involved. By this point Tereshina was really trying to hold back her anger, so Melia backtracked, reassuring Tereshina she would try discussing it with her father. She then remarked how it might be a good thing. Hisui was also losing patience with Melia. He was confused as to why she always had that strange pleased look on her face. Melia was then sent away after apologizing for the third time. She begged them to keep being nice to her. Hisui walked with Sara, Melia's attendant. He whispered for her to scold Melia when she got home. Meanwhile, Tereshina looked over the flower. She saw that the black one's remains were still in the ground. She picked them up, wondering what she should do with them. Nina walked past, and Tereshina asked her to take the flower petals away. Nina took them while the others came to look at the flower. They called it Lady Tereshina's flower. Tereshina was very proud of herself. Solitique seemingly appeared out of nowhere, startling Tereshina. She was told that her eyes had changed back to their usual rose-pink color. Solitique admitted that he thought it could be a god's blessing, but it was hard to judge. Then Tereshina held her cheeks, wondering if this was a sign of a blessing. She also remembered that when she touched the great tree, her left eye grew hot. Solitique told her that it would be best to speak to a priest at the Grand Temple, saying he would go with her. Tereshina smiled warmly, thanking Solitique for his help. Later that night, Tereshina was given an overview of her progress, which was growing nicely. She relaxed in the bath, excited over everything that had happened today. She was very tired though. She did not think she would be able to fulfill her promise to her father so soon, though her father might be unhappy since he wanted her to stay home. As a result of business talk from Nichols, who visited as a tourist, 3 of his employees decided to move to the village. They first had to build the branch, so store operations would begin a little later in the future. He also wanted to strengthen the warding against evil. There were many children in the village, and if he recalled correctly, the condition to strengthen it was subjugating monsters. But Tereshina had no means to fight, so all she could do was ask Hisui for advice. She knocked on the door of her father's office, wondering how he would react to the events of the day. But her father was happy to see her, with a huge smile on his face. He had already seen the white flower, and he was beyond impressed that she had managed to make the great tree bloom so soon. To Tereshina's surprise, her father embraced her in a hug. He told her he had thought it was impossible at first and apologized for treating her so strictly. Despite her being without a blessing, he never cast her aside, so Tereshina felt nothing but love for her father. Her father looked down at her, telling her she was now appointed as the official lord of the 2nd district. Tereshina could not believe it. She and her father took a seat, and Tereshina told him everything. The only question she had was what she should do about Lady Melia. Both she and Hisui could see that her father was holding back his anger toward the girl while maintaining a positive expression. He said that he did not intend to do anything harsh. He had long known Count Saltiamar, and his son was reliable, but because Lady Melia was frail, it seemed they had indulged her every whim. Tereshina's father also commented that Count Saltiamar's wife had passed away as well, but regardless, Melia's behavior toward Tereshina was unacceptable, so he would speak with them. Tereshina thanked him. Feeling some sympathy for Melia, her father reminded her that just because Melia had a hard life, it did not mean she was allowed to do as she pleased. He told Tereshina not to let sentimentality excuse her. Celistina smiled, telling her father she understood. Her father commented on the mark in her eye and how he had believed that Tesri had no blessing. But perhaps she was loved by an extraordinary god. Celistina thought back to the choices she had seen and the flower that bloomed on the great tree. Hopefully the Grand Temple would have answers. Her father was not so sure, and he was uncertain what would happen to Celistina. Her father asked Hisui to support Celistina no matter what, and Hisui told him he would do his utmost to be of use to Lady Tesri. Toy barked, making sure they all knew they could count on him too. Celisina's father chuckled, giving Toy a pat. Meanwhile, Solotique stayed up late, reading books to try to find answers. There seemed to be no precedent for a blessing appearing in the eyes. There was no information on it at all, and it was possible that Celistina was the first person it had happened to. There were also no records of the white flower that bloomed on the great tree, nor of the black flower. What then was happening to Tesri and Melia? Solotique closed the book. While Tesri was happy to have a blessing, she must also be uneasy about the situation. Solotique was only trying to help by finding as much information as he could, but he felt like he had failed. If Tesrishina's blessing was rare, the temple would insist on investigating and summon her to the Grand Temple. Solotique knew he needed to prepare himself. No matter what, he was going to protect his fiancée. Soon after, the Pictor Trading Company's Tesrine branch was finally open. Tesrishina was shown around by Mr. Anton. She stepped inside to see the lovely shop filled with fresh produce and items. The assistant told Tereshina she was the very first customer, and that the carpenter Nicholas had brought along really worked fast. She commented that it would have been better for them to build Tereshina's house too, but Guts told her he just did not want to rush it. They laughed, knowing how proud Guts was. Since Lady Tereshina would be staying, he was making sure the foundation and interior were solidly built. That was why they were gathering materials, so Guts could remain focused on construction. Tereshina told them she wanted to help with something too, but she was told that what she was doing was already enough. He was just so happy that Lady Tereshina had asked him that he was putting more effort into the details. He promised that he would not keep her waiting long. He went on about how no corners would be cut and that he would build it from his heart. Tereshina smiled encouragingly, telling Guts that she was really looking forward to it. With the shop built, the condition for Great Tree Level 7 was achieved. But since the condition for Level 6 building her house was still unmet, the level remained at Level 5. Since Guts was putting his all into building it, Tereshina decided she would just enjoy the journey. Once the house was done, the level should jump up by 2. Nicholas congratulated Tereshina on becoming the official lord of the 2nd district. Tereshina smiled, surprised Nicholas knew. He told her that as a merchant, information was an important weapon. Of course, for the others it was new information. They gathered around Tereshina in excitement, congratulating her on her new title. Mr. Anton even suggested throwing a big celebration. Tereshina told him that their words of congratulations were more than enough for her. But Mr. Anton insisted, saying that an occasion like this needed a proper celebration. Nicholas mentioned that the shop was fully stocked with goods perfect for a feast. Mr. Anton smiled, telling Tereshina that her joy was their joy too. Of course, Tereshina accepted after hearing that. The others excitedly planned what they needed, and Mr. Anton told Tereshina he would begin preparations immediately. Hisui told Tereshina this was what he expected, since she was very popular. That was something Tereshina still had to get used to, and she placed her hands on her cheeks in embarrassment. Hisui asked Odette what kind of food she would make for the feast, and she said she had not thought of anything yet. Odette asked if there was a dish that fit a banquet she had in mind. Tereshina thought that something everyone would enjoy would be best, so she suggested a barbecue. But Odette and Hisui had never heard of a barbecue before. Tereshina described it as an open fire with meat and vegetables cooked on skewers. The best part was that it brought everyone together outside to eat. They thought it sounded wonderful, and Tereshina told them she would get the equipment ready. Nicholas offered to help, and Tereshina thanked him. She offered to prepare the ingredients instead, but Odette already had that sorted. So Tereshina was completely core-free, leaving Hisui to suggest they go and check on the great tree instead. The tree was standing strong and proud, and Hisui told Tereshina that it always greeted them warmly. Tereshina could see that more leaves had sprouted. She guessed it was because the children were harvesting now, and with the harvest surpassing 10,000, the blessing of abundance had leveled up. Hisui told her that once it grew even more, it would be very beautiful. He was looking forward to it, as was Tereshina. Tui barked, and Hisui guessed he must be hungry. He asked Tereshina if he could have a few potatoes. Tereshina smiled, telling Hisui he could let Tui have plenty. When she was alone, she activated the Asgard system, which revealed her current status. The great tree was at level 5 and all acquired skills were listed. Before heading to the Grand Temple, Tereshina wanted to raise the skill levels further. If Protective Charm reached level 2, the monster free zone would widen. For that, she would need to defeat 100 monsters. There were also skills she might be able to gain at the Grand Temple, so she should plan ahead. She hoped for the tree to grow strong and healthy. Odette began the barbecue and told Tereshina she could sit down and relax, but Tereshina insisted on helping this time. It would be a way for her to grow closer to everyone. Odette smiled as Tereshina handled the food. She told Tereshina she was quite unusual, since normally noble ladies would not chip in with the dirty work. But Tereshina was always happy to help with farming and cooking. Tereshina told Odette she was enjoying herself now, and that was thanks to Odette and all the other villagers. Odette was once again overwhelmed by Tereshina's gracious words. Hisui came over and offered Lady Tereshina either ale, wine, or juice. Tereshina asked for juice and Hisui passed her a glass. They all gathered together for a toast. Tereshina asked if Mr. Anton wanted to do it, but he said they should ask the Lord instead. Tereshina began to sweat. She still had many worries about whether she could really manage as a lord from now on. But everyone gathered around, warm smiles on their faces. In that moment, Tereshina knew that for the sake of the people here, she would do her very best. She told them she was happy they could all celebrate together like this today, and that she was very proud to have become the lord of the village in the 2nd district. She thanked everyone for working so hard with her and for their support. She raised her glass into the air, making a toast to the future of Tesrin village. The villagers raised their glasses as well. Soon after, food was served. Mr. Anton told Tereshina to eat well and enjoy her meal. She thanked him for her plate. She told Mr. Anton that although the exact date was undecided, it seemed she would be heading to the Grand Temple soon, so she might not be able to come to the village for a while. Mr. Anton told her he understood and that she could leave everything to him while she was away. Tereshina asked if he knew the children's ages as well, since she wanted to check the schedule for the blessing ritual. Mr. Anton told her there were 3 children who had not had the ritual yet: Giselle, Maurice, and Nina. Giselle was 5 and born in the autumn month. Maurice was also 5 and born in the spring month. Nina was 4 and born in the wind month. The other children had already completed the blessing ritual. Tereshina thought to herself that today was the 10th day of the fire month. For Tereshina, it was only after coming to the village that she had started doing work with her hands. Odette apologized, knowing Tereshina probably did not want to see her worn hands. But Tereshina told her there was nothing to apologize for. She loved Odette's hands and recognized how hard she worked. The only thing that concerned Tereshina was that Odette's hands looked painful, and she offered to bring her some hand cream next time. Odette teared up, telling Tereshina she could not possibly accept something so expensive, and that Tereshina's sentiment alone was more than enough. Tereshina knew Odette was too kind. She understood that products for nobles were far too costly to use comfortably, and she wished hand cream could be more affordable for everyone. Guts tapped Tereshina on the shoulder, thanking her for being so kind to Odette, but Tereshina told him she was only speaking her thoughts. That, however, was exactly what Guts meant. With the money from the stalls, they had been able to buy hunting tools and ingredients. Everyone was happy that the variety of dishes had increased and that they could obtain meat more easily. It was thanks to Tereshina that life in the village had become much more comfortable. Tereshina was overjoyed, not only because she had helped these people, but also because she had found a real community among them. It might be selfish of her, but at the very least she wanted those within her reach to live in peace, and that was why she had to do her very best. Giselle's blessing ritual was discussed next. With the ritual held on the last day of each month, and since it also involved Tereshina's blessing, it would be held at the Grand Temple. Hisui went on his way to send the documents there. Tereshina stayed in her office to write Celistina a letter, but she asked Hisui to wait for a moment, as she had another important matter to discuss. Hisui turned back, wondering what it could be. Tereshina paused before telling him that she wanted to defend herself. Hisui was confused at first, but said she must have a reason. Tereshina told him she had too. She explained that she had been going out more often and freely walking around the village, and she wanted a way to defend herself against monsters. Hisui knew she was right. He knew it would be best if he could always protect her, but he had his limitations. Tereshina added that the other reason was for the great tree in the village. She could not explain it well, but when she defeated monsters, the great tree seemed relieved. As the Lord, she wanted to give that reassurance. If she could subdue the monsters near the village, it would help the people too. Hisui told Tereshina he did not understand the great tree, but that he believed in her. He said they should decide on what kind of weapon would be best. Tereshina asked if it was really okay, but Hisui joked that he could not say no. Tereshina was very happy, and she planned for them to go to the weapon shop tomorrow. She was finally making her debut in monster hunting. The next day, Hisui and Tereshina arrived at the weapon shop. They were greeted by the store assistant, and Tereshina looked around in awe. It was even better than she expected. She told him she needed a weapon she could handle well, and Hisui added something for the rear guard. The store assistant smiled, realizing it was not a case of Tereshina walking into the wrong shop. He suggested a bow, throwing knives, or spirit orbs as good choices. Tereshina told him she was not confident in hitting anyone with knives, so either the bow or the orbs would be best. The store assistant brought out a bow, telling her this one would suit her well. It was easy to handle and especially popular among women. Tereshina inspected the bow, thinking it might take some getting used to. She asked how much it cost, and he told her 50,000 lus. Tereshina thought the price was fair, since it was something she would continue using. Tereshina then asked to see the orbs as well, and the assistant brought out a box filled with them. There were 4 different types: fire, water, wind, and earth. When thrown at an enemy, they attacked with the power of each elemental spirit, and their effects were tremendous. Celistina glanced at the price tag, which was not very pleasant. She thought about how much money they had saved. They needed funds for the village's development, Hisui's salary, and soon they would have to hire maids and guards as well. To defeat 100 monsters, the cost would be far too high, so it would be better to try the bow for now. Still, Celistina wanted to keep a few orbs just in case, for herself and for the village. She told the shop assistant she would take the bow and arrows, along with 5 spirit orbs of each type. She also wanted a weapon for Hisui, who planned to be on the front line, so perhaps a sword and throwing knives. The assistant went to the back and returned with a light but powerful-looking sword. He also brought Hisui several throwing knives. There were heavy ones with strong power, lighter ones that would not cause fatal wounds, and intimidation types. He asked Hisui if he would like to try throwing them. Hisui tossed a knife which landed just past the target. Celistina was impressed. He did well for a first attempt and showed great control. The store assistant told him that with practice he would land clean hits. Hisui tried again with another knife which was easier to throw. Celistina decided they should go with that one since ease of throwing was important. Hisui agreed, thanking Celistina with a big smile. They thanked the store assistant and left, though Celistina still hoped to try the spirit orbs one day. She brought the weapons back to the village and showed them to the villagers. Mr. Anton immediately recognized what they were. Celistina told them that since the village's defenses were lacking, she thought it would be best to have some prepared. Mr. Anton knew they were expensive, but Celistina told him not to hesitate to use them if he ever needed to. Mr. Anton thanked her, vowing to protect everyone if the time came. Celistina worriedly told him not to push himself too hard, but Mr. Anton was as valiant as ever. She then told him she hoped to discuss the blessing ritual today. She asked if it would be better for Giselle to join as well. Mr. Anton agreed, and Odette offered to go and fetch her. Giselle arrived at the office a few moments later, greeting Celistina cheerfully. Celistina smiled and told Giselle she would explain the blessing ritual now. Giselle was extremely excited, clutching her cheeks as she tried to contain herself. She was very cute. Hisui read out that they would reach the Grand Temple in 10 days, so they would depart on the 29th day of the autumn month. The carriage would be provided, so there was no need to worry. Celistina added that Lord Solitique would also be accompanying them. Mr. Anton and Giselle reacted even more strongly, knowing the Crown Prince would be joining them. Giselle giggled, telling her grandfather that he was stumbling over his words. Anton told Giselle that unless you were a noble, the chances of speaking with royalty were slim. Celistina explained that since they would be traveling in separate carriages, there might not be much interaction. Mr. Anton bowed, telling her he would do his very best not to cause any trouble. Celistina told Anton not to worry, as Solitique was very kind. She added that he had even said he wanted to visit Tiran village personally. Mr. Anton could hardly believe his ears. The next thing for Celistina to sort out was the hand cream she wanted to get for Odette. She walked into the shop to see Chloe, who was very surprised to see her. Celistina explained that she had a favor to ask. She wanted to make hand cream using Tiran village's honey, and she was there to ask for the help of the Pictor Company. She asked Chloe if she knew how to make hand cream, and Chloe replied that if hand cream from Tiran village were made, she would absolutely have to use it all the time. Then Chloe realized that she would be the one in charge of production, and she reassured Celistina that she knew exactly what she was doing. Celistina chuckled, telling her that was reassuring. First they would need honey and beeswax. Chloe told Celistina she would ask Guts to deliver them to the store. She would also talk with Guts about how much they could set aside for hand cream use going forward. Chloe awkwardly brought up material costs, sales price and profit distribution, and Celistina reassured her that she would discuss it with Anton as well, so they could settle everything later. Chloe told Celistina that once a prototype was ready she would contact her immediately. Celistina told Chloe she was looking forward to it, and once she left, Chloe clutched her hands in excitement. Celistina was a lovely person, and Chloe felt as though a sweet fragrance had drifted through the air. Celistina was elegant even in plain clothes, and the fact that she herself brought up finances was very admirable. Chloe vowed to do her very best, and she was so excited that she said it out loud. Hisui and Celistina giggled from outside at how fired up Chloe had become over the idea. Hisui asked Celistina if she was really planning to fight monsters today, and Celistina said she thought she would try starting with weak monsters. Flower rabbits, for example, were the weakest and almost mascot-like monsters. But when they stood in front of a flower rabbit, Celistina could not help finding it cute. In the game she could defeat them without thinking, but in real life it felt wrong to her. Hisui asked if she was alright, but she told him she just needed a moment. Hisui understood. It must be hard to slay monsters for the first time. Meanwhile, Celistina reminded herself that it was for the village. When she finally composed herself, Hisui offered to draw the rabbit's attention so Celistina could shoot. He threw a blade to distract it, and Celistina raised her bow. She was very worried she might hit Hisui's head, so she told him to step aside. But if Hisui moved away, the rabbit might run off. Celistina became overwhelmed and asked Hisui if they could retreat for the day. Hisui suggested that instead of real combat they could start with target practice. In the end, that was what they decided. Later that night, Hisui asked Terashina what he should bring to the Grand Temple. Terashina told him nothing special, just a change of clothes. She almost mentioned underwear as well, but that would have been far too embarrassing. She then told Hisui that they would need a new maid to accompany her to the village and the temple. Hisui looked at her in concern, so Terashina quickly blurted out that she could not have him managing her underwear. Hisui went bright red, stammering that it certainly would not be appropriate since he was a man. Terashina sipped her tea. She had to get her point across one way or another. Hisui then added that they could make one of the women from Tiran village her maid. She could work in the village normally and attend to Terashina whenever she was there or traveling. Terashina knew that was a good idea. There was Odette, or Sophie. Since it would be more of an assistant for village duties rather than a marquise's lady's maid, it would not feel like too much pressure. She told Hisui they could discuss it tomorrow. First though, they needed to contact Anton. If Hisui sent a fast horse, the letter should arrive before bedtime. Hisui told her he understood and that he would send the letter immediately. Terashina was very excited. She knew that since they were going to the Grand Temple, they needed to clear many quests as well. She sat down at her desk and began to make a list. As she wrote, she felt certain that this would allow her to gain even more skills. Odette and Sophie asked Anton what he needed from them. It was already quite late, and they still had to put the children to bed. Anton reassured them that Guts was taking care of that. A letter had just arrived from Hisui, and it said that if a decision was to be made about a maid, the sooner the better. He cut straight to the point, telling them that Terashina would like one of them to become her personal attendant. Sophie and Odette could hardly believe their ears. One of them would be Lady Terashina's attendant. Anton explained that it would only be when Terashina went to the village or the temple. He also said that even if they did not decide today, they could keep it in mind. Sophie grew worried. They had no education at all, and they did not know the first thing about serving. She was happy, but she would hate to make a mistake and embarrass Lady Terashina. Odette looked worried as well. Terashina must know that they came from the slums, and yet she still wanted to hire them. That had to be because of her kindness and trust. Odette felt the same as Sophie. It was nerve-wracking to think she might not be able to repay Lady Terashina's kindness, but if she could give back even a little, she wanted to serve her. Anton smiled. He told them that they truly loved Terashina, and both of them enthusiastically agreed. Then an awkward moment followed, before Sophie smiled and told Anton that Odette was the most suitable for the role. Odette began to sweat, telling Sophie she was a bit rough around the edges. Sophie chuckled, telling Odette that the way she was now she would only embarrass Terashina. After receiving Sophie's encouragement, Odette stepped forward. She told Anton she would take on the role in Sophie's place but that she would teach Sophie everything she learned. Someday they could serve Terashina together. Anton smiled, telling the girls that it seemed the matter was settled. What mattered most was that both of them looked pleased. Sophie added that while everyone was away, she would work to make the village even better and surprise them. She would serve Terashina with all she had as well. Odette was panicking. She remembered what Grandpa Anton had said and told Terashina that if it was all right, she would like to become her attendant. Terashina smiled, saying she was very happy to hear that. Giselle appeared out of nowhere, asking if this was what yesterday's talk had been about. Odette proudly announced that Sophie was on a mission to improve the village so much that everyone would be surprised when they returned, and that Odette herself would work just as hard at serving. They both cringed and told Giselle to be quiet, but Giselle, innocent as ever, said she would do her best to help both of them too. They thanked her, still deeply embarrassed that she had exposed them in front of Terashina. Hisui told Terashina that things would soon become busy, so it would be best if Odette started working as soon as possible. Terashina turned to Odette and explained that her first task would be helping her prepare and manage her luggage when they went to the Great Temple for the blessing ritual. Odette looked anxious, but Terashina told her not to worry. First, she could accompany them to the mansion in the capital. Terashina's maids were based there, and they could teach Odette the work. Odette looked very excited at the thought of visiting Terashina's home. She bowed deeply, thanking Terashina for the opportunity. It would be wonderful to learn proper manners, then teach Sophie and eventually even the children. If everyone's education improved, the village would become even better. Terashina told Odette to lift her head and handed her a handkerchief. Odette hesitated to accept it because it was so lovely, so Terashina gently dabbed her tears herself. She told Odette that from now on there might be many hard and painful moments. When that happened, Odette should tell her. She did not need to carry everything alone. Odette agreed, and Terashina reassured her that she would grow used to things in no time. Although Odette still had her worries, everything Lady Terashina did, even the smallest gesture, meant a great deal to her, and made her happier than words could express. Odette then asked Terashina for one thing, if it was something she could request. She asked Terashina to tell her whenever she made a mistake. Odette knew how kind Terashina was, and she did not want her to stay silent if Odette did something improper without realizing it. She would hate to cause trouble for Terashina because of that. Terashina giggled, telling Odette she was very earnest. She agreed that if something happened, she would be completely honest with her. Odette smiled and thanked Terashina. If she could bring her even the smallest joy, if she could be a support to her, she would be truly happy. She did wonder, though, if she would feel the same way if it were another noble. Teresina asked Odette if she would be alright joining them starting today, and Odette replied without hesitation that she would. Teresina smiled, telling her she would be counting on her. They arrived in the capital, and Odette was completely blown away by the beautiful architecture and bustling streets. She leaned toward the carriage window, telling Hisui and Teresina that it was her first time there. Teresina smiled, asking if that was so, and suggested they do a bit of sightseeing. Odette thanked her, her face lighting up with excitement. They wandered through the streets, peering into boutique windows and admiring the lovely dresses on display. Eventually they arrived at the mansion. Anna came out to greet them the moment they arrived, and Odette was struck by how graceful and polite she was as she spoke. Teresina introduced Anna to Odette, explaining that she was from Tilan village and would be serving as her attendant. Odette bowed and told Anna she was looking forward to working with her. Anna returned the greeting, saying it was a pleasure to meet her, then immediately corrected Odette's posture. When Odette straightened up, Anna nodded approvingly, and told her she looked very elegant standing that way. Teresina explained that Odette would be accompanying her for some time, and asked if Anna could guide her as a senior maid while they were at the manor. Anna agreed at once, saying she would take Odette under her wing. Teresina let Odette go, encouraging her to do her best. With Anna's guidance, she was sure Odette would quickly learn the basics and proper manners. Anna then told Hisui that they could proceed to their chambers. A carriage bearing Lord Solitik's emblem awaited them, and Anna wondered aloud if it carried a message regarding the Great Temple schedule. Hisui said he would handle it, and told Teresina she should rest in her room. Toi followed Teresina inside, and the moment they were alone, she knelt and wrapped her arms around him. She told him he was her greatest comfort and that she loved him very much. Toi barked happily in response, making it clear he felt the same. Soon after, he caught a scent coming from her bag, and Teresina giggled, telling him he really did have a sharp nose. She pulled out a large piece of dried meat she had bought earlier and handed it to him. Toi began to drool before eagerly chewing it down, and Teresina laughed softly, telling him he did not need to rush. Just then, Hisui entered the room, informing Teresina that a letter had arrived from Lord Solitik. Seeing Toi looking so pleased, he paused, and Teresina explained that she was giving him dried meat as a reward for always working so hard. Hisui handed her the letter, then noticed something out of the corner of his eye. He pointed out that she had a bit of Toi's fur caught in her hair near the nape of her neck. Teresina was not surprised, since Toi was a large, fluffy dog. Hisui went to fetch a paper knife while Teresina braced herself and opened the letter. After reading through it, Hisui asked what it said. Teresina replied that Lord Solitik had adjusted his work so there would be no major changes to the original schedule. Hisui let out a sigh of relief. It was reassuring that Lord Solitik, the Crown Prince, would accompany them to the Great Temple. However, with the round trip taking over 20 days, it meant he would be unable to deepen his bond with Lady Melia during that time. If the two of them failed to strengthen their bond, Teresina would die. The Great Temple was also not a place they could casually visit on their own. Noticing her silence, Hisui asked if something was wrong. Teresina admitted that she had been considering inviting Lady Melia along as well. Hisui looked shocked at the suggestion. Teresina continued, saying it might be a good opportunity since Lady Melia wanted to grow closer to them. It was clear, however, that Hisui was not Melia's biggest fan. Seeing his reaction, Teresina told him to forget the idea. For now, romance would simply have to wait. At that moment, voices sounded outside, and the door opened. Odette and Anna stepped in, Odette now dressed in her new uniform. She looked wonderful. In her hands she held a bouquet of roses, a gift from Prince Solitik. Teresina smiled at the beautiful flowers, and Odette admitted she had been surprised as well. They were so large and vibrant. Tarshanai told her that they were likely roses carefully tended by the royal gardeners in the palace gardens who cared for them every day to make them bloom so beautifully. Odette listened in awe. It all felt like an entirely different world to her. She arranged the flowers carefully, and Tarshanai praised her both for her skill and for how lovely she looked in her maid outfit. Tarshanai then explained that until Odette fully learned her duties, she could stay at the mansion. After that, she could return to the village, so there was no need to worry. Odette was deeply moved by how thoroughly Tarshanai had thought everything through. And for Lady Teresina, Odette resolved that she would do her very best.